it might be kind of a cool idea, and I appreciated him offering it and doing this. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to come on.
My pleasure.
All right, I'm gonna mute everybody for just a second. All right, everybody, we are live on the internet with the first show here of For the Good of the Game.
That's awesome. Well, big thanks out to shout out to the King of Stream, William Moorfield, and Prep Spin for hosting us. We really appreciate the production and being able to share all this stuff. I want to do a couple of quick introductions. Unfortunately, Coach Ben Palmer was not able to join us from Tulsa tonight. We certainly wish him the best and hope that there's no issues with his family. But we do have Coach Philip Hawkins and Coach Deshaun Burns with us. And I wanted to, just for perspective, because that's very powerful as we go through these discussions, I wanted to be able to give a quick intro. So Coach Philip Hawkins is the head coach at Bryan Station High School in Lexington, Kentucky. Prior to joining Bryan Station, Coach Hawkins spent 2 years as the head coach for the Apollo Eagles in Owensboro, and was preceded that by 4 years at the as the head coach at Louisville Doss. Phil's a Navy veteran who attended the Navy Sea College program in Seattle, after which he played football for 3 years at the University of Washington. After returning to Kentucky, he built his coaching resume as a middle school head coach, and most notably became the first inductee into the Kentucky Middle School Football Hall of Fame. He's a native of Frankfort, Kentucky. He's also a consummate football junkie, I know, and even though we haven't linked up in a while, I'm really proud to announce he's also a published author with a book entitled, If My Football Could Talk, This Is What It Would Tell Parents. So I want to make a special welcome to Coach Phil Hawkins, the head coach at Bryan Station. Coach, thanks for being here.
No, thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate that, and I'm looking forward to this.
Awesome. We also have Coach Deshaun Burns, who's the head coach at Linfield Christian in Temecula, California. He's been the Lions head coach since 2013, during which time he's been blessed to coach both his sons and his daughter. Oldest son, Lorenzo, is a returning senior and nationally ranked defensive back for the University of Arizona Wildcats. Deshaun's coaching resume is loaded with college and NFL experience, including University of Florida, UTEP, Texas Southern, and stints with the Washington Redskins, 49ers, and Philadelphia Eagles. Coach Burns played high school football at Rubidoux High School in Riverside as a two-way starter, and went on to play both football and later baseball for the USC Trojans. Coach, we're proud to have you and really appreciate you taking the time to be here.
I think Coach may have lost his signal, John.
Okay. No worries. Well, we will get started and overcome the difficulty and get Coach back on when we can. Phil, I wanted to ask you, you still there, Phil?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Coach Burns, you back on now? All right. Well, we'll get started. I'm gonna reach out to Coach Burns real quick while we're talking, Phil. If you would, Phil, what I want to get to some specifics for you personally in terms of your perspective, but I want to start off with what do you think with the quarantine actions going on right now? What's the single biggest challenge that you have to overcome, as a head coach?
Obviously we don't have hands on these guys, so we can't be with them 24 hours a day, and they're not with us for that 2 hours. So, it's hard to imagine what all of them might be doing. I think we've instilled some urgency in them anyway, so I think they want to do the right thing. But But the challenge has been, especially as first year at Bryan Station, is we didn't have the opportunity to have spring football. So obviously you're injecting a new offense, new defense, new philosophy into a program, and now you're taken away after I had about 60 days with them before we were put out of school. So that's a challenge.
Absolutely. I mean, not only obviously you being a head coach, there are a lot of things you can overcome in terms of knowing do and potentially when to do them. The trouble is you really didn't get a chance to make what you might call an intimate connection with any of those players, or at least not to the extent that you'd like to without spring ball. Based on your past experience, having taken over programs, what type of things did you kind of line out that you could get done despite the quarantine?
Well, we put a lot of processes and expectations in place over that little bit of winter condition that we got. So, we laid the foundation for what the expectation was, and the kids were 100% bought in to that. So, now we've been able to keep our interaction with them through technology, but our only hope is that they follow through on some of those things, and I think that with the raised expectations, I suspect that they'll do more of that than you would imagine.
Yeah, that's I I would have a hard. I know, even with youth football, because laying the foundation and establishing the standards does not necessarily take quite as long, and it isn't as intense as it is in high school. It's been a challenge for a lot of the local coaches I know, because as they get ready to try to get into their programs in a couple of months, they really don't have any answers right now. What have you struggled? How have you struggled to in your situation, to maintain accountability, and what kind of actions or innovations did you have at disposal to try and overcome the challenges that you've got?
Well, as you know, this all sort of snuck up on us. So, there wasn't a lot of planning going into it in regards to this. We didn't know how long it'd be, and of course, I don't think any of us imagined it would be at the level it is. But, the one of the challenges was I had hired a whole new coaching staff. So I've got 10 guys that I'm just getting to know also. So you couple that with 60, 70 new kids and, 9, 10 new faces and personalities with the staff. It created a huge challenge for me. But, one thing that we did do is we spent enough time as a staff during the winter condition that we got in there to get to know each other and understand our personalities. And we've had to meet just like teachers are with their students now. So, we've had Zoom meetings. They're going to break it down to their position groups and continue those Zoom meetings. And we're just going to keep as much intimate contact as we can through technology until we see, what's going. I mean, it's going to be a challenge if we all just show up, the end of July or whenever that date is and say, let's go. For me, it is, because there's no, the program under me is in its infancy. So, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be changed, and philosophies, inherited by these kids. And we're going to see we're doing our best to stay engaged with them, but, it could be tough.
Well, what technology do most of the students have? Has the school provided? I know a lot of schools nowadays, the ones not a lot, several districts I know of have provided some kind of laptop or technology, iPad or whatever. Do your students have access to that, or are you dependent on them having their own technology in order to stay in touch with either the position coach or yourself?
Well, John, here's the amazing thing. So nowadays, almost all those kids have a phone in their hand. So most of this
Right.
technology that we use is they're carrying around in the palm of their hand anyway. So that bridges that gap. The thing is, the teachers now are interacting with students across the country, at Bryan Station for sure. Through Meet, which is a program that allows them to interact with the kids digitally, and then Zoom, as I spoke of, it essentially puts all their faces on the screen so I can look at them and we communicate. And most of those kids are just using their cell phones. So, this is one time that I'm glad they all have a phone.
Yeah.
Most of these kids are carrying one around, and this is the one time we're thankful for
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. As much as when phone became a thing and everybody started to have them, they became a discipline issue in many cases, especially for teachers and administrators, and I'm sure for coaches as well. Even though most of us have maybe a bit more control on our own battlefield when they get them to practice than they do in the classroom sometimes, unfortunately. But how difficult have you found it, or maybe is it not as big a challenge because of your experience to reach out and be able to motivate the kids, whether it's you personally or your staff?
Well, one thing that I know these days, kids want to play. And, the kids that are going to play for me on Friday nights, they've got a certain level of dedication inherent into them already. So, those kids are going to train themselves and make sure that they're physically prepared. And then one thing that I've, let the kids know is I'm going to test them physically day one. So they're gonna show up in shape, or they're gonna have a lot of work to do to get caught up. But these kids at Bryan Station are really excited about a new coach and a new future. So I know they're putting in some work. I'm sure there's a few that haven't got off the couch, but I think they'll be in better shape than you'd imagine, actually.
Yeah, I was interesting. Burns back on. Good to see you again, Coach. I went up and I had shared one of these videos, Facebook, and 30 minutes ago, Coach Burns was live from the shot that you see of him now. Coach Burns with a couple of his students on his laptop, had his phone going. He was doing drills and flipping hips and stuff to the students. And just ask Phil, how have you found that you've had to change your um,
John, you're breaking up.
Did he
a
freeze
bit.
up again?
Yeah, you're also
I
freezing
am?
up a little bit too.
Okay.
Coach Hawkins and I are solid, and then you and Coach Burns are freezing up just a little bit right here.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh yeah.
It's
Okay.
when you
I
move
think
close to the monitor, I think, is when we get the issue when you're moving around a little bit.
The camera's probably got an ugly detection signal going. That's what it is.
probably
I
looks like Coach froze up again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he did. Well, we'll continue on. Phil, what do you see as right now? What do you see as the biggest risks? There's been discussions on a national level, both as far as high school football goes, as well as the college game, of depending on when we can come out of this, whether we'll have a season, and if we do, whether it may start late and continue in full, or whether we would do a shortened season. In either of those scenarios, what do you see as the risks, in more so from a player standpoint than anything else?
Well, I have zero medical background, but I have tried to keep track of this and follow it as much as I can. And of course, the most thing, you hear about the social distancing the most, and it makes you wonder as a coach, how do you social distance when you're asking a kid to tackle a player? So, I don't exactly know how they're going to manage that. I think that I've seen. I saw in some of the presidential addresses that he's done that those phases will allow for athletics. I think one of the phases will allow you to compete in athletics as long as you stay under 10,000 fans. So I know how it's going to affect an FBS school for sure, but on the high school level, I don't know the value of playing without fans. especially since this is not a televised event as an FBS college football game would be. So, if they do it without fans, it's strictly for those kids. Um, and I can't even imagine. I'm just like the kids right now. I want to go and play football, and I know they all do, but how do you guess what's going to come of this? And I know in our state, um, listening to the governor's report, it started to flatten out some of the cases, and Kentucky's done a great job of keeping those cases low. I think we have less than 4,000 cases in Kentucky, and you think about that compared to other parts of the country, it's a very, very low percentage of people that have even got involved with this virus. But, I can't imagine. I mean, one thing that probably would make sense is if you started, if you were going to shorten the season, you'd want to do it, I think, the week before district play. So, week 6, week 5 here in Kentucky, play one game leading into your district, play your district, and do playoffs. If they wanted to shorten it that way, it'd buy you some more time, buy you another 2 months. And that may be something to consider. But, I want to play 10 games in a playoff, especially, a new venture at a new school. And I'm sure that Coach Burns feels the same way. We all want to, play football, and our kids do, and that's all we know. So, I can't even speculate, John, on what's going to happen. I'm just going to go with the flow, and when they tell me we can practice, we'll practice.
Do you think there's a little more risk involved in trying to do a full season on a shortened schedule from the standpoint that the kids don't get as much conditioning, and you can't necessarily, as you said, control the ones that are sitting on the couch right now? Or do you think that risk is fairly minimal if you had to come in and prepare in a compressed timeline and then play that full 10 games plus a playoff?
Well, I think if it the way they've set our season up, Kentucky now, you've got those 2 scrimmages leading into week 1 also. So, a lot of us batten down for those 2 weeks a little bit anyway, because, that second scrimmage, especially is game style. So, maybe the scrimmages go away, and you've got 2 more weeks of full type practices with extra conditioning. If it's a shortened season, biggest part of our conditioning leading in is also acclimation, heat acclimation. So, the later in the year that starts, the little less involved the heat becomes. So, there may be some issues, but the thing is, it'll be an issue for everybody. So the playing field will be somewhat fair in regards to conditioning.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that a lot of programs kind of lose sight of in the short term is that whatever the effects are, they're going to be experienced by everyone. So it's as big a disadvantage across the board, as you can have. And I'm sure that for it's a little bit easier for a guy with your level of experience coming into a new program to kind of approach it from a little bit more calm perspective because you've been there before. For some guys that may be newer head coaches or have new staffs put together that haven't been in your situation, it may be a little more difficult. So, Coach Burns, can you hear us now? I still think it's having some internet issues on his end.
Yeah, he's coming and going.
I'm here.
Yeah, I don't know that we're going to be able to keep you on or not. It's kind of coming and going.
Hey, John, why don't you give him a text on my cell phone number, and we'll get him in at least on audio. I can patch him into the board through my cell phone.
Okay, we'll do.
We're good.
Well, what we're going to do is I'm going to text you William's number, Coach, so you can so we can at least get you on audio.
Coach,
For all our fans or people that are listening out there, I really appreciate you guys hanging on. These technical difficulties are driving us crazy.
Okay.
Coach Hawkins, how's Bryan Station? Even though, I mean, obviously you haven't been over there because of the situation we got going on, but how's it feel to be at Bryan Station?
I'll tell you what, I really enjoyed the 2 months I was there before this. I really enjoyed these kids, and they're eager, and the administration there has been great, and it's a really good fit for me, actually. So, we've got good facilities, and there's tons of athletic ability in that building, and I just need to do what I do, and line it out, and put some systems in place, and I think that they can close some gaps fairly fast.
John,
It's a good place.
I've got Coach Burns on the phone with us now. Coach Burns, can you hear us?
I sure can. Sorry about that, gentlemen. I don't know what's going on over here.
Can you hear
Maybe
him?
everybody's...
Yeah, we got him loud and clear, actually. Well, let us backtrack. I've been wearing Phil out here. He's having to take an extra sip of tea there while we're taking the break. But let me go back and ask you specifically, again, it's kind of a contextual question. With the advantage of being a seasoned returning head coach, what have you best been able to facilitate despite the quarantine? I mean, I've seen evidence of it, you using technology. Why don't you describe that a little bit for some of the other coaches or folks that may be listening or watching?
Yeah, when we first got wind of this and thought that maybe, this thing was going to kind of go on a turn, kind of mapped out and said, basically, we're going to treat it like meetings, we're going to have meetings. And so we just turned everything into having basically Zoom or online meetings and kind of put a deal in place for our guys to check in via school. And then I said, let me kind of get in front of the curve, if you will, and we're gonna talk a little ball. So I need to every morning I'll wake up and then knock down about 20 to 60 push-ups. And it started out I need to see our guys be active. And it was just a deal of, you guys are going to show me how active you are by way of video. And I need to see you doing something, whether it be push-ups, sit-ups, flipping a tire, whatever you might have access to. So we kind of jumped in front of it, if you will, John, and said, you guys are going to be a little active. And then as it progressed, since I do some training, I kind of train kids on the team and outside of, kind of started with a couple guys getting ready for the draft, and J.J. Taylor and Cedric Peterson. So I've been training them, but then we got a quarantine. We still need to be able to work out. So we just turned into a virtual workout. So all you need is enough space for you to spread your arms and spread your legs out, and we'll make it stationary. We can focus on some stuff. So we just took everything we're going to do and just made it, hey, do it at home, stay in shape, and then we meet. So we're treating this like spring ball, and we're just having meetings. And I figured, hey, let's get on it that way instead of waiting to see what we can do. Let's be proactive and kind of set the bar. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And for those folks that may not have seen the video, Coach Burns gets on his laptop, and he may have, I've seen him with as many as 2 to 3, 4 kids with little inset screens in a Zoom meeting, and he's in the corner, and he's got his phone going and some music blowing, and he's coaching them up while they're sitting there doing some type of either calisthenic or football movement drill, position-based or otherwise. And I just think that's fantastic. I know in leading up to this and talking to Coach Palmer, one of the things that they had done at Victory is they broke down the team into squads. So, far be it from a former Marine to take the military approach. And they broke their team into squads, and they assigned squad leaders to check in at the student level. And then those groups also, I'm presuming they did it probably by position coach. And those groups check in with their position coach as well. So it's brought out a number of things that I think are unique that, coaches can now theoretically employ some of these techniques going into the future, whatever, the quote new normal ends up being. And it gives us a wide variety of things. Deshaun, I asked Coach Hawkins this question a minute ago, but if you're presented with the issue of either having a shortened season where you play less games, or you come in later and play the season further into the year, do you see any inherent risks or disadvantages one way or the other in terms of getting a season done?
No, I mean, what's happened is we've kind of went the other way, and everything got pushed up. Out here in California, the governing body staff and everybody kind of pushed stuff up. So by December 2nd, everybody was done. Before, it used to go a little further, right? It used to go a little later into December. But now, shoot, we're done by December 2nd. So guys are getting kicked off in August, at 0 weeks. So guys are playing in August as opposed to before. You're going to play in September. Right, the way it was when we were growing up, you played in September and you got done like mid-December or something, right?
Right
before Christmas break or whatever the case is. So I think if that happens, the adjustments are really minimal. You figure right now we're out here, we'd be heading into spring ball like next week. Okay. So what we're missing theoretically is physically doing spring ball. Okay. But that doesn't stop us from meeting. So we can get on, virtual meetings and do the whole deal. As I'm talking to you, my son, Lorenzo, he's in the other room right now. They're having a DB meeting for University of Arizona. They're meeting right now. And then 3 hours ago, he had a study hall meeting. So he was on the line talking to a study hall professor, and they were talking about what they got to get done. So I think pushing the season back doesn't hurt. It allows us to get some stuff done. You still play within the time frames. Maybe you kick it off in September and it kills the 0 weeks and all that other stuff in the showcases, but you're talking 10 weeks, right? So that's 2.5 months, September, October, November, and then you got another for California. You have another 5, possibly 6 weeks of playoffs in a state championship, what we have now, which puts us mid-December. So it puts us theoretically a week or 2 weeks later than December 2nd, right? So it'd be right before your Christmas break or whatnot. And it was like that years ago. So I'm not opposed to that. I think it gives us some time and slows some things down. I think you get back to some basics. And then if they were to shorten it and say, okay, look, you kick off and you'll play maybe 1 preseason, 2 preseason, then you play your league, then and so be it, and you still have a chance to get to the playoffs to keep regular start dates and finish dates or whatnot. The preparation comes on the individual and the teams, right? You know what I mean? It's just, what are you doing? Sure. And get a true testament of what's happening, like a true test of how you're preparing and what you're doing and who's really about the action, like who's really into it and getting it done,
Yeah, I think one of the things that we'll see across the board at the high school level especially, it'll be evident at college as well, but it's, in colleges, you've got established programs where players are recruited to come into a system, whether it be offensively or defensively. And in high school, it's always been, you kind of got to brung with or dance with the ones that brung you kind of thing. So, when you talk about disadvantages, it's certainly going to favor whatever is done, eventually. If we have a shortened season or it's bumped later, it's certainly going to favor those clubs or schools that have an upperclassman heavy roster that have been in a system for a while and already have established DNA and rules and regulations and so on. And that's, and that doesn't mean that a young program or an inexperienced coach can't have success. It just means they may have a little bit steeper learning curve, once they get on the ground. I think what both of you talked about in response to the question about the shorter season is really the adjustment I think that most people are keeping in mind, more of a positive outlook. It's not so much that the season gets shortened, it's that the prep time may get shortened if we push it back or we don't. And I think that as long as we come in and those athletes can come in and execute what they have to do from a physical standpoint, I'm not so much talking about a carryover from the COVID stuff as much as just physically being in football shape to come in and play a 10-game season and hopefully a playoff run. And that's where I think that it's a little bit different and maybe more challenging for a younger club that doesn't have that upperclassman strength. I mean, do you guys see it the same way?
Yeah, I think you're close.
Yeah. Go ahead, Coach.
I'm sorry. I think you're probably right. I didn't like hearing what you said because I'm coming into a new program that's probably not too senior laden. So, that all you did was remind me of some of the challenges I have, ahead of me, but especially with a shortened environment. So, sorry about that, Coach.
No, you're good. You're good. I think, JD, if we're being, keeping it and looking at it realistically, I think twofold. It forces everybody to get back to basics and do, what's your identity and do what you do. And this is just my take. Whether I be a senior laden team that's played, okay, so you play in the system and you understand the system. The tangent and the piece that people got to pay attention to is the physical conditioning. Like, what type of shape are you in? Because you're going to hit the ground running, right? And it's no different than the league, right? With these guys, the OTAs are going to be dead and, whatever. So the guys getting drafted, there won't be any OTAs necessarily. So there's a couple guys I'm training right now that are in the league, and they've kind of alluded to they're going to hit camp. There won't be any OTAs. You're going to walk into camp, and you better kind of be ready there, JD. You better be ready to rock. Yep. And so it's more of, what is your preparation like going into the season? You'll have to get thrown in the fire. You have to take your lumps. So if you got some young bodies that haven't really slapped heads and smacked around each other at the high school level, if I got a sophomore junior laden team and not a junior senior laden team, and the sophomores that are now on a team were freshmen a year ago, there might be some fires I got to walk through because now the smacking's a little different for maybe a couple weeks. But I think the playing field gets leveled because nobody's been hitting for this whole time. So even your seniors that have been tackling and did all that, and they've had 2 or 3 years to get it done, they've not been tackling and had the deal. So now we're all walking onto the field, and it's a matter of what type of mental shape in. And then I truly believe it's the football IQ part where, I got to know where to be and how it looks and how it fits. So I look at it as a plus that you can get really good without putting the pads on. Not that I would ever want to just live like that, but that looks like it's going to be a reality for the colleges. And I'm watching my son as he prepares and what he's doing on a daily basis. And then I'm watching some pro guys that I'm involved with and what they're doing on a daily basis. And the bottom line is be ready physically for whatever comes mentally. So, if you shorten the season, you may get dumped in that fire as a new coach your first 2 weeks. It's hot and heavy, but I think it'll all level itself out by week 3 or 4, and that would be relatively second week of league or so, So now you're in the mix and everybody's got the same playing field, right? Nobody truly has an upper hand. And then you have the transfer piece, right? That, what does that look like for kids transferring and coming in a new season? So, if you're not wise, it could blow up on you. But if you handle it well, I think it could be something that people benefit from.
Yeah, I think that I think some of the biggest challenges are clearly going to be the initial assessment. Like Phil, you walk into Bryan Station and you've had a chance to meet the kids and you kind of know what to expect. But walking in for everybody, in your case, being a new head coach there. It's them learning what your expectations are and you being able to see what the gap is between those expectations and what you've got to work with. And then, as a seasoned head coach, it's a little easier to make in-game adjustments, as it were, even though it's not game time yet. But you can make those adjustments early on and do the things you need to do to get the ball rolling in the direction you want. Do you see, do you think that with the technological communication you guys are able to have right now, even though you can't physically be together, you're going to be able to bridge a lot of those gaps as well?
Yeah, our last staff meeting, I'm sorry, Coach, our last staff meeting, that's one of the things we discussed is really we can probably install an offense and a defense with those kids through media, through technology. You know, they're going to have to implement it physically once we do find our way together. But, you know, we're just going to take this time and try to get as much X's and O's and football IQ stuff done leading into that. And like Coach said, you know, some of these kids are going to show up physically and mentally ready. Some are not. In a non-COVID-19 world, you're going to have that also. You're going to have some of these kids show up ready to go physically, mentally, and then you're going to have those kids that transition a little bit slower. So, you know, I've got enough, not being a new head coach, but just new to the school, I have enough systems in place and you know, philosophy things in place that we're going to make it happen.
Let me ask you both something that's not related specifically to this situation, but I attended the USA Football Conference in Louisville this year and went through some of the certifications for tackling and blocking. And of course, for the folks that know about this, it's no surprise, but there's been, you know, in the long-term athletic development model, the hockey world has led most sports for years in terms of putting kids through things that are commensurate to their developmental level based on their age. And in football, USA Football just implemented the football development model, which is similar. And they're pushing flag football for younger kids, light contact for the middle school ages, and then getting into full contact for high school. In terms of the overall safety of the game, and you guys are both kind of old school guys, you know, how do you see that model, as it were, being introduced, and how much resistance may there be at the high school level for coaches supporting that in terms of developing kids? Coach Burns, why don't you go first with that?
Well, I think that I think it's actually a good model to revert back to. You know, when we were growing up, I think in our haste to be so technologically savvy and ahead of the curve, that we've forgotten some things that made us be good at what we do, you know, which is football and the kids playing. So getting back to the basics of understanding, you know, as you're easing into this, because it's a contact sport, right? The kids got to learn how to run and engage and have some contact. And I think going from nothing to running into somebody full speed, knocking them down, and not getting the proper tutelage, I think I did a little bit damage and created a big hysteria and a scare, you know, and we know what the challenges we're facing with that in itself. But I think going back to a model where there's emphasis on, I know out here we have Friday Night Lights. So, I mean, that might be big everywhere else, but there's kids that are doing the flag football thing. So our elementary school has a little flag league, and then our middle school has flag football. And then if you've shown that you can handle flag, then in 7th grade in our middle school here at Linfield, you could start tackling 7th and 8th grade, tackle football, and then you get into 9th grade. So there has to be something to implement and kind of bring the kids along. And I don't think that is a bad thing. I think it's getting back to us being fundamentally sound and teaching the basics, so that there is an understanding of what it involves, and it's not just get really big and run into a guy, and the bigger the kid is, the harder he's going to hit. I mean, that's kind of where it's gotten to, and it's kind of sad, honestly, because it's not realistic. So I'm not against it. I wouldn't push it back. If I heard something like that, I'd be all for developing, because that's what you're talking about, creating a developmental league or a developmental system and a feeder program into your relative school.
Yeah, how about you, Phil? Do you think that taking that step back and doing it in a more thoughtful manner and reducing the contact at younger ages and giving the kids the fundamentals is going to help build when they get up to the program that you're coaching?
Yeah, I think that Coach was right in what he had to say. I think that, you know, when I was being brought up in this game, you know, it was technique, and we learned how to tackle. We learned how to put our head. We learned how to bow our neck. We learned these things as part of the game, and I think what's happened probably in those younger levels, you know, youth coaches have found out if I can get a big fast kid, he can just run over everybody. And if you look at some of those games, this is what it looks like. You've got 10 kids on the field on offense that don't know a lot, and you've got one kid that's just, you know, give him the ball and let him run through people. So, you know, I think, you know, technique certainly has sort of disappeared, and I see it as a high school coach. I'm sure Coach does too. But you know, if they're coming from a program we don't have our hands on, you know, in Kentucky, you're either going to get a kid from youth football or you're going to get one from middle school football, and you hope that they came from a coach that's coached them up, and you don't know. And I've, you know, in Louisville, I had kids at Doss that would show up from a youth program as a freshman and couldn't get in a stance. Now, that's a breakdown. And
Yeah,
so
definitely.
you know, I've seen that. I've seen it, you know, and I've also seen kids that came in with a super high football IQ that had an understanding of technique and leverage that came from that same level. So, you know, I don't know if you control it necessarily by age. I know that flag football is relevant here in Kentucky for those very youngest kids, but, you know, I'm not sure if it's a contact limitation as much as, you know, what's being coached to these kids.
Amen.
Yeah,
Amen,
I think
Coach.
so. I think so too. Go ahead, Coach
Yeah.
Mullins.
You're hitting it on the head, Coach. I mean, there's a lack of teaching, right? So you hear these are the coaching points that you're hearing. You're bigger than him. Knock him down. Run him over. Kick his butt. What does that mean? What does kick his butt mean? I'm 7. What does kick his butt mean? You mean you want me to fight him, Coach? You know, you want me to go out there and kick his butt? Knock him down. How am I going to knock him down? Well, you're bigger than him. Okay, so because I'm bigger than him, I should knock him down. So you didn't tell me anything about bending my knees or where I should be tackling, where I should be looking. And then that first thump for all of us is a telltale sign, right? Either we like that or we're not. We don't necessarily like that interaction. And then by hit 2 or 3, we've made a decision. We made a conscious decision what life is going to be like. And I think that's being pushed aside. It's more, here's the big guy. Get the fast one the ball, get the big one the ball. And he's ad-libbing. You know, he's making a juke or a fake, and he's doing it. And we're just enamored. We're being fans. There's a lot of fans and enamorment of the skill and not teaching the technique to enhance the skill that's happening down there. And so when we get it, you're right, Coach. You know, there's some kids that can't get in the stance. You're like, wait a minute. Well, son, well, they let me stand up. Well, why'd you stand up playing defensive end? Well, I didn't like getting in a stance. So they never had you get in one because you didn't necessarily like to put your hand in the dirt. So you just stand up and ran around everybody. So you're having to break those habits. So I think getting back to the fundamentals, and it's a great question, JD, getting back to the fundamentals of the sport and teaching them how to get in the three-point stance. I mean, you know, we had that one coming up. It seemed boring, but you learn how to get in the stance. You got in that stance 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. You kept getting in the stance, then you learn how to come out of your hips and use your hands and strike. It just wasn't, all right, pass on, let's get the Gauntlet Drill right now. Let's go to Gauntlet. Right now, no, you led up to that. So if we can get back to that, I think we save our sport, you know?
Yeah, I think go ahead, Phil.
I was going to say something to Coach. You know, I can't remember ever starting a practice as a player or even as a coach not having one of my first periods, you know, stance and start. So if I'm doing it at the collegiate level, and if I'm doing it as a coach at the high school level, then certainly it would be good for those kids at those lower levels. And I think that lends back to the whole topic of, you know, are those kids being taught properly? And, you know, I've seen some high school programs that don't have that 5-minute period of stance and start within their own program. And then you can watch them on Friday nights and you can see, because they didn't take a small piece of the game and perfect it, that it has its bad outcomes on Friday.
Yes, yeah, sir. And I think be something that Floyd, and I learned it from an old wily guy that taught it to me. But when I was most recently in football, we used to do a lot of the little specific fundamental drills, like start and stance kind of stuff, after conditioning, and force the strive to be excellent when they were dog tired. Because if you can get your guys worn out and still not perfect it, but get that technique as polished as possible, and chances are they're going to be able to execute it, toward the end of the fourth quarter when it counts the most. And I know, Phil, we had the type of thing happen. I was coaching a little small Christian school. We had like 19 kids on the team, and it was, high school football, but we were playing 8-man. And it was kind of comical in some respects because we had, man for man, the single largest offensive and defensive lines in the county, in Hardin County, compared to even the 6A schools. Man for man, average weight was larger than all the high schools, but we also had the least amount of experience, football IQ, and it was always a challenge. So we had no choice. We couldn't get fancy. We had to teach fundamentals and stick to them. And you hit the nail on the head a minute ago when you were talking about it. I think too often what we see younger ages, particularly 10 and below, is, a couple dads get together and their sons are the studs, and they put an offense and a defense together, and they can be successful because they want to win and be able to live vicariously through their kids and feel good about themselves. And they're not teaching a doggone thing to those kids in terms of football. So, and that is, all generalizations being false. I'm sure there are many, many great youth coaches out there, but I think that's where we need a revival of fundamentals and technical skills, is at the youth level, so that these kids start to learn at the very basic age, whether it's flag or tackle, what the fundamentals are, and properly how to get into a position, how to be balanced, flat back, how to step out, strike, get leverage, things like that most of us unfortunately don't end up getting a ton of kids coming up at the high school level that have that degree of expertise, if you will. But listen, gentlemen, I didn't want to belabor the points, and through all the technical difficulties and everything that we had going here, it's been a great discussion. But I had planned on this, being about an hour, and I'm going to stick to my guns because it's almost 8:00 Eastern time. And Coach Burns, I appreciate you jumping on through all the thick and thin of the technical difficulties that we had. And Coach Hawkins, I wish you guys both the best for the season. Whatever that season turns out to be, I'm sure there will be a season. Well, however we end up executing it, I know both your teams will be set to do it the right way. So for everybody that did take time to join us, we appreciate you. Next week, we are going to have 3 NFL alumni on, and we're going to be talking focus on offense. We're going to have Chris Miller, former Oregon and NFL quarterback, Wes Chandler, former Saints and San Diego Chargers wide receiver, and none other than Jim Mouse McNally, one of the probably most respected offensive line coaches in the National Football League, with over 40 years in that position group. So we're going to focus on offense next week. And at the same time, and in the meantime, I'll get with the King of Stream and the other coaches, and we will work out all the technical difficulties and hopefully be a little smoother than you guys had to help me tap dance through this one. So thank you both to Coach Burns and Coach Hawkins.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good luck to you, JD.
Coach Burns, Coach Burns, let's try to connect on social media. Let's try to connect on social media at some point. And I'd like to keep up with you this year and see how things go for you.
Oh, same here. Let's do it. Let's connect with JD. We'll get numbers when we get off the air or whatnot. So let's do that.
All right. I'll make sure you guys stay connected. That's awesome. Thanks again, guys. William, I appreciate you, man. I will chat with you tomorrow.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thanks, William.
All right, guys. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.